We know that life as an entrepreneur can be scary, but here's one thing that you can use to calm some of those fears. Now, fear isn't always a bad thing, or at least I don't think so. I don't think it should be a driving factor in our life, but I think it's within us for a specific reason. And I don't think that we should just completely ignore it all the time. I think we should work with it. We should examine it. And I don't know about you, but I absolutely love to study the psychology of what makes us do the funny little things that we do. Is it fear? Is it pain? Is it pleasure? Is it this? Is it that? And like, how does the human brain work? Fascinating to me. But with entrepreneurship, like, especially if this is just the first time that you've started your own business or started your own organization, and you're not exactly sure where the next paycheck is coming from, that can be very scary. And some of the things that come along with having your own business and building your own team and all that goes into building a company, building a business, a lot of these things can seem very, very counterintuitive. And, a lot of times we get into our survival brain and we make horrible decisions when we're not thinking clearly or not thinking logically. So, like, where do these fears come from? And I was just thinking about this. Like, if we look around at our sphere of influence, like, how many of the people around us actually take the same type of risks that we're taking? How many of those people in your sphere of influence, or the people around you, the people that influence you, the people that kind of gave you the way that you think now, how many of those people actually have the life that you want to live? And I know that some of my guests on the podcast have talked about this before. The one that I'm thinking about right now would be like Austin Edwards, which is, I don't know, episode 14 or 15 maybe. You go back, give it a listen. It's a great, great episode. But he talks about taking advice or looking up to people that don't necessarily live the life that you want to live. Taking advice from those type of people just is not that great of a decision, especially in the area of being like an entrepreneur. Now, I don't know who you are. I don't know who's listening to this, but the norm that I grew up with isn't actually the norm that I want to keep living. I don't want to continue this norm, so to speak. I want something else. I want something better for my life. In order to get places you've never been, you're going to have to do things that you've never done. And I think it's just better if we can get that phrase down deep into our skulls and just remember that. Every time something comes up, every time a fear comes up, every time we feel uncomfortable, in order to get places that we've never been, we're going to have to do things that we've never done. Remember that. And I've heard some variation of that quote somewhere else. That is not original with me. But the thing that I've found with this podcast is there's a lot of smart people that have written some really, really great books. And you can actually take their quotes and don't plagiarize, please. But you can sound really smart just by reading their books, and by quoting other people, you can sound really smart. But make sure to give them credit. To give credit where credit is due. Anyway, back to our original program here. A big thing for me, and I think a lot of other people that I've talked to, is it's just, man, they don't want to fail, or they don't want to seem like a failure. They don't want to look like a failure. They may not actually come out and say that, like that, but that is kind of the underlying factor. And we're actually going to talk about this on an upcoming podcast. I have a guest lined up that I'm very excited to have on a podcast. So please subscribe so you don't miss it. It's going to be a great, great episode. And we're going to talk about failure, how we view failure, and maybe, get our mindset right to think about failure in the correct way. Not wanting to look like a failure, we get caught up in this thing of like trying not to look like a complete fool to the people around us. And this is something that I've had to work on for a long time. I'm still working on it. I feel like I had a very, very significant breakthrough in this area recently, but you know, even with a significant breakthrough, I really feel like there's more work to be done in that area. And um, and so we're just going to keep working on it. And I go back to, I was listening to Ed Milet. I was live and in person listening to Ed Milet speak, and something he said caught my attention. He said, you could be cool or you can be rich. Now, I know not everybody, I mean, everybody probably wants more money. Not just probably. Everybody could find a use for more money, right? But some people don't like being called rich, okay? But you could substitute successful for rich in that phrase any day of the week and it would still be true. So, if we would quote him with swapping out rich for successful, it would say, you can be cool or you can be successful, right? And we get so caught up in like, what are these other people going to think? Like, this looks so foolish and this is so counterintuitive to the way I was raised and this is so counterintuitive to the way I think and like the way I think the world works and all this stuff. Like, it's so counterintuitive to all that thing, those things. And like, if we think about it long enough, and if we go down this path and we do things that we've never done before and the people around us, they've never done them either, it's going to be so counterculture and it's just going to make me look like a fool because, all these people out there, they're doing fine. And here I am doing something different. I'm going to look the fool. But we just have to stop trying to not look like a fool. Maybe if we focus less on not looking like a fool, maybe we could focus more on accomplishing the things that are actually important to us. And, maybe for you, you want to be cool. Maybe for you, not looking like a fool is very, very important. Okay, cool. But there's another point that I want to think about here. If you took a chance on something, maybe it's a business, maybe it's an idea that you had, maybe it's a nonprofit. You took a chance, you started down this path of doing something that you've always wanted to do, and maybe you come to a place where it just does not feel right, okay? And more than likely, that's going to happen somewhere along the journey. You're going to start something, you're going to do something that you've never done before, and somewhere along the line, it's going to feel like nothing is going right. And I just want you to remember that in doing things that you've never done before, it is very, very normal for you not to feel comfortable in those situations. And this one's hard for me, okay? So like I went to school. In school, I didn't really struggle with studying, okay? You go out, you play basketball, you play softball, you play all these things at school, and none of these things were really hard for me. I get out of school and I start working, and then, eventually I start my own company, and now a lot of these things, like I just expected them to go like school went for me, and I expected them to work out like sports for me, which neither of those things were really hard for me to get good at. And business, starting a company, entrepreneurship is the one thing that has really, really, really kicked my butt. And I'm not exactly sure what it is. Maybe it's just my own personality. Maybe it's because I never really did struggle in school. But things that really, really kick my butt, I am very, very attracted to, actually. And that's kind of how I actually ended up marrying my wife. Is there was other girls that I hung out with, for sure. But there was one girl that made me work for her attention, and that was who I ended up marrying. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about me, but if something looks like a challenge, if there is something that seems like it doesn't come easy for me, I don't know what it is within me, but I want to fight back against it and I want to conquer it. And that's where I'm at with this whole entrepreneurship thing, with this whole podcast thing. I mean, all of entrepreneurship, starting my own company, business, doing business, like that kicked my butt so bad. And yet I at this point, like I really feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm so attracted to having my own company, being financially free, doing all of these things, having more time and money freedom. Like that stuff is very, very attractive to me. And I really think that that's going to come through entrepreneurship. I don't think that's going to come through my 9 to 5 job. Anyway, and so these things, they kick my butt, they tear me down in a way, but it's something that I'm so, so attracted to because it does not come easy for me. It's a challenge, and I like challenges. Anyway, that was a wild rant, a wild tangent. You guys probably didn't come here to learn about me. But what we were talking about, if you took a chance, if you started something, and you get to a point where it just doesn't feel right, remember, it's not supposed to feel comfortable because you've never been here before. And it's very, very hard. Like, I don't know why it's so hard for us to accept that fact, or for me to accept that fact. And maybe it's just because, like, culture sells us comfort. Every product, every service, everything that people are trying to sell us is to make us more comfortable. And trust me, I like to be comfortable too, okay? But I cannot allow myself to chase that if I want to do things that I've never accomplished before. Because if I sit in comfort and I have goals and I have dreams that's just out there, and I decide to chase comfort instead of my dreams, I don't really think that there's going to be a world that we live in which both of those things are possible. You got to choose one: comfort or accomplishment. Anyway, I feel like I'm very scattered and very kind of going off the rails here. I hope this is making sense to you guys. If I am way off my rocker on any of this stuff, drop it in the comments. I would love to hear. I'd love to hear what the audience is thinking, what the audience is saying. Some of these fears that we have, going back to the fear thing, some of these fears that we have just need to be dealt with, right? There's some that are healthy, but then there's some that just come from those situations in which we don't feel comfortable. Those places that we've never been before, those things that we've never done, we feel uncomfortable. There's a good reason, but those fears just need to be dealt with. And how do you deal with the fear or with the feeling of being uncomfortable? I guess it's just to spend more time in that specific space, doing that specific thing, and doing that over time and time again. You're going to build comfort. And then you can move on to the next step. All right. I lost my way in my notes here. But I don't necessarily feel like I am the most qualified to speak on this specific subject. In fact, I might be the last person on earth that should be having a podcast about entrepreneurship and mindset. I don't actually completely agree with that statement, because I feel there's some points in my life where I kind of wonder what I'm doing as well. I really feel like I am where I'm supposed to be. I'm a man of faith, and so I feel like I am living in God's will, and I've seen God work in amazing ways in my life. And sometimes I feel bulletproof, like I can just go do whatever I want. And so I lack a lot of that fear of like uncertainty. I think kind of the challenge of things very, very much attract me as well. For example, we're planning on moving out of state here shortly, out of Oregon. We're going to go somewhere else. And I don't really know that many people in this specific community, in that specific area. I have a job that I can do remotely, but I don't have a 9 to 5 set up. We don't necessarily have a long-term place to stay once we move down there. There's just some of these things that if I was to conform to the norm around me, I would have a lot of those things set up before I even moved down there. But part of the thing that attracts me to moving is like just the challenge of getting all of those things set up. Moving into a community where I don't know anybody. That's the challenge of like building a friend group and like getting to know people within the community. Figuring out a place to live, figuring out what you're going to do for a job, figuring out all of these things. And I'm not I I'm not flying off of the rails here. I do have an income, like I said. I do have something that I can do remotely, something that I'm currently doing that is generating me some money, and I think we are going to be just fine. It's just there's a lot of people that I've talked to and told them my current situation. At a certain point, I didn't know exactly what I was going to be doing to make a living. I didn't have a house lined up to rent, and I didn't have, other things like a specific church lined up to go to. And some of these people, they really look at me like, what in the world are you thinking? What's going on here? And there's just something within me that I guess there's just a lack of fear there. And I feel like that's where I'm supposed to live, is in the lack of fear, full of faith. Because like I said before, I've seen God work in amazing ways, and I'm looking forward to him working in this situation as well. I think it's kind of up to us to put ourselves in situations where God has the opportunity to work miracles in our lives. I feel like we get so caught up in the comfort cycle, and we want to be comfortable, and we don't want to take risks, and we don't want to look like fools, and we don't want to do all of these things. We want to control every aspect of our life, and we end up living a life that is less than what we were designed to live. And I don't want to be that way. I want to take risks. I want to go out there. I want to go out there and create situations in which I believe, is God's will for my life, but also to give him places to work in my life, to, work miracles and to work situations out and to show himself powerful, because I feel like that's what we're supposed to do. Anyway, I am getting so off topic here, but this is just my own personal experience and some of my own personal things that go on in my head. What I wanted to talk about, and this is going to sound very elementary, it's going to sound like such a duh statement, but one of the ways to calm down a lot of these fears of like, am I going to fail? Am I going to succeed? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? Am I going to look like a fool? One of the ways to actually calm a lot of those fears is to commit to your goals and your dreams all the way. Commit to it and say, I'm not going to give up until I get there. No matter how long it takes, no matter how hard it gets, I commit to my goals. Because here's the thing, I was just thinking about this afternoon. Maybe a lot of these fears and a lot of these, you can probably hear the dogs barking outside, but, professional podcast studio going on here. But maybe a lot of these fears and a lot of these decisions that we don't want to make and a lot of the things that just get us worked up so, in a wad is maybe because we just give ourselves too many options. You might have in your mind the option that quitting is okay. And I'm not saying to run yourself into the dirt. I'm not saying to abandon your family and stop providing for your family and things like that. I'm just saying sometimes we get all worked up and we get all worked up and we hesitate to make decisions when really maybe there shouldn't even be a decision to make there. Commit to those dreams. Commit to the things that you think are what you're designed to do, the things that you feel like you're designed to do, the places you're designed to be. Commit to those things. Get very clear on those goals. Get very clear on those dreams and commit to them 100%. And that, when the option comes up, or when you run into a brick wall, when you run into a dead end and you feel like giving up and things get real, and, commit to those goals, commit to those dreams, and don't give yourself the option of giving up. Make it a matter of when, not a matter of if. And really, like, humans are such amazing creatures. Like, we can hit a dead end. We can hit a brick wall. And, if you talk to people that have found success or that have accomplished what they set out to do, like, a lot of them will talk about asking the right questions and focusing on the right things. It's not so much of like powering through and just grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding. A lot of times, like, these things are just asking the right questions and focusing on the right things, and our minds will literally go to work for us and start solving these problems. In fact, there's a story that I heard, and I'm pretty sure it was a real story. But it's been so long ago since I heard it. But the professor he was doing a study on dreams. So he had his students read a sequence of letters every night before they went to bed. And they had to figure out what the next letter in the sequence was. And the sequence of letters was T, T, F, F, S, S. What is the next letter in that sequence? And so every night before they went to bed, his students would read this sequence of letters. And every night, his students would read this sequence of letters. They would go over the sequence of letters every night before they went to bed. And finally, one of the students came to school and he said, "Professor, I've figured this out. The next letter is E." And the professor said, "That is correct." And he said, "How did you figure that out?" He said, "I literally had this dream where I'm walking down a hallway, and on both sides of this hall are pieces of art." And he said, "I walk in there, and instead of art, it just had numbers on these pieces of art, right? It wasn't like some pretty picture, it was just numbers. And on this side over here, it had a 2, which stood for the first T. On this side, it had another T, which is for the 3. And then on the next one, it was a 4 for the F. This one was a 5 for the F, 6, 7. And so he said the next letter in that sequence would be E for 8. And he had figured this all out in his dream. His mind had literally went to work for him and figured out the riddle without him doing any of the actual work, besides just reading that sequence of letters every night before he went to bed. And so your mind is an extremely, extremely powerful thing, and has amazing, amazing problem-solving capabilities. And we just need to ask the right questions, focus on the right things, and our mind will do a lot of the work for us. And Connor Watts talked about this in episode 13 of the Merchandise Show. His advice was, you need to get very, very clear on your dream or what you really want out of life, and then you focus on that every day of your life. Focus on that dream, focus on that goal. Don't let all these little peripheral things bog you down. You're not even going to care about the work that comes along the path to accomplishing your dreams, because you're so focused on the goal, you're so focused on your vision, you are so focused on your dreams that you don't care about these little peripheral things. You don't care about the work that comes along with it. And that's great advice. And if you haven't given that episode a listen, I would definitely recommend going and giving it a listen. It's a great episode, and it really just has a low view/listen count to it. So if you haven't listened to it already, go listen to it. And so, like, how does this tie into our conversation about not if, but when? If you have your goal clear in your mind, and you literally fall in love with the thought of reaching that goal to the point that you're unwilling to give it up, you will cling to that goal until it becomes a reality. If this is the case, it really doesn't matter if you mess up. It doesn't matter if you fail. It doesn't matter if you know what you're doing. It only matters that you're still working every day to accomplish that goal. The uncertainty or the scary part of entrepreneurship, like we said before, may just be decision fatigue. If you give up the option to give up the option to give up, then there is no decision to make there. Make it a matter of when, not a matter of if. Thank you for listening to this episode all the way to the end. If you enjoy what you listen to or what you watch, please subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, or LinkedIn. And as always, go out there and mind your own business.